ladies and gentlemen, to On a Water Break at Step Off. I am your host, Jack Goudreau, and I have the pleasure today to talk to Northern California's most illustrious color guard parade person in the NCBA circuit, Miss Colin Apperson. Welcome, Colin. Attend. Hut. Here we go.
Right. So
Let's start from point A. Where did you start in your career of marching band? Where were you in middle school, I guess, when that opportunity became available, and where are you now?
So I started performing in marching band in middle school in 1997, but I had always grown up watching Winter Guard. My brother's girlfriend did Winter Guard. And so I would she would babysit me and take me to the rehearsals, and I'd sit and watch them. So I grew up loving it. So when I got to 7th grade in 97, that's when I first did it.
Okay. And you're from Fairfield, right?
Yes, I am from Fairfield, California, born and raised. They had a very, very prestigious middle school programs galore, high school programs. Color guard and the marching arts was huge in Fairfield in the 90s.
Okay, yeah. And so going through from middle school into high school, the parade scene really became available, or was it already available to you in the middle school arena?
Yeah, in middle school, it was really cutthroat. There were 2 middle schools, Dover and Sullivan.
Yeah.
And they were good enough. They used to field marching bands that were really competitive in the fall season.
Okay.
So I grew up seeing all the high schoolers in the fall.
Okay. And that was really your guiding light, looking up to this is what I wanted to do when I got into high school, right?
I saw Fairfield High with those girls in the kilts and knew that's for me.
Okay. So you go through 4 years at Fairfield, and everyone knows in the Northern California arena, the old Fairfield was the monster band, arguably the best NorCal marching band to ever exist.
Yeah, definitely.
So when during your time at Fairfield did you first get that taste of, I want to be a color guard instructor? I wanted to continue with this after high school.
I didn't really know that I wanted to do that, but I was obsessed with the color guard instructor at Fairfield. I loved him, Jason Flores.
Okay.
Everyone at that school in that color guard was obsessed with him. He was such a wonderful teacher and just so influential.
And so in the color guard at Fairfield, what were some of the attached units for what was the setup usually?
I mean,
what did it look like for our listeners who've never seen a Northern California parade ensemble, right? It's could you give just a quick description of what are the attached units for the color guard? I know there's a lot.
There is a lot. So in that particular period, you had 3 sections. You had the letter line, the rifle line, and the flag line. And it was insane. It was so hard to make it into the color guard, even onto the flag, even the back flags, the people that just hold the flags in the back,
right,
who don't even spin. It was a cutthroat audition. There were 60 members of that color guard, and they cut people where you weren't even allowed to hold the flag.
Wow.
So my freshman year, I barely made it on, even though I had done 2 years of color guard. Right. I was not even invited to spin. So I had to hold the flag and do nothing my whole first year.
But still, seeing that standard of excellence and that outstanding level of performance, that was your guiding light to get into that position. So senior year, where were you in the line?
Well, actually, it happened sophomore year. I was really bitter that I didn't get to spin. So I made it. We had 3 guards. Gosh. I was in the C guard my freshman year, and then sophomore year, I was so mad, I bumped up all the way to the A guard. Junior year, I was a featured member. Senior year, I was the section leader. So, I think that's always been, a thing for me. I feel the need to prove myself, and that's been my story from the time I was 14.
Yeah, well, and I think in an institution like that, when you're going through the beast, right, because it is a beast. I mean, you have, how many 60 people in a color guard? How do you stand out? You have to think of every way you can get your foot in the door for that. So you get through your senior year of high school. You've been a color guard captain of this this monster guard, and you then eventually step into your first instructional role, right?
Yeah.
So when was that first time you became an instructor?
Oh,
and
Lord.
when did you get a handle of the parade game?
That first year was so brutal.
Where was it?
It was back at my middle school. It was Dover Middle School. It was so bad that I was literally fired after my first job. It was terrible. Like I was there with my friend Audra Perry, and we were trying to make these little, it's so embarrassing, these like middle schoolers go out and do stuff that we had just got done doing in an independent world guard. We're making them throw sixes and exchanges, disaster. So we were not invited back the next year. And then we got hired on, she got hired on at Armio High School.
Okay.
I did not get hired on at Armio High School at first. I came to a rehearsal just to watch her. And randomly, the guy that was in charge, Marcus Mills, saw me just sitting there, and he said, "You do color guard?" And I said, "Yes, I do color guard." And he said, "Great, here's this kid that can't throw this toss, help them."
Wow. And so that's how that started.
Yeah. And then he saw me working with that kid, and he said, "That girl has potential." And he went and spoke to the band director, and I got hired on the spot.
Wow. And so when do you say you finally got the formula for this is what a parade routine looks like? And I know it took me 4 to 5 years to actually finally figure it out, how to master that, right?
Yeah.
Because we always want to throw so much content into something, and we always want it to be the biggest, most crazy routine. And then you learn that's not the secret. It's being a little bit more conservative and having one thing that makes a difference. At least for me, that was the big learning lesson for me. When did you get a handle of it, and what is the color guard version of that for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's something that, as I said, my colleague Marcus Mills and I, we love to go back and giggle and laugh about it, because we had no mentorship whatsoever, because he and I took over the program at Armio and worked together to try to craft some brilliant parade routine. We were trying to up the game and change what it meant to be on the street as a color guard. And we thought we did in many ways do stuff that was never, ever seen before on the street.
Right.
There used to be posts in forums, World of Pageantry forum, of people specifically, and I know their names, but they all had handles back then. So they were randos, and they would complain about all the stuff we were doing and saying that it was ridiculous and horrible and hideous, and we were ruining parade color guard, and we just kept doing our thing. And I would say it took us probably, 5, 6, 7, 8. Honestly, I would say 4 years together of just trying to figure out the formula.
Okay. Yeah, it took me about the same time. And of course, we had there were moments where you would have that success, it'd be a little blip, and you're okay, take that piece, scrap everything else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I slowly pieced it together as a drum major instructor.
Absolutely.
So when you were going through that period as a competitive guard on the street, which parade guards stuck out to you immediately as your favorite and your competitors? What were the ones that you aspired to be?
Honestly, and this is gonna sound crazy.
No, go for it.
No one, because I always set out to do, this was always my goal. I always wanted to set out to do something that hadn't been done before.
Right.
Because, so going back to high school with Jason Flores, he was wild too on the street. We had one section in our show my junior year.
Was it parade for Paul?
Yes.
Okay.
And we put our equipment down to Farewell to a Slavic Woman, and we had a dance break. And that was kind of unheard of back then. Don't get me wrong, there were other guards that did it before us. I remember seeing Vallejo do that before.
Right.
But
the size of the guard, and the level of the production was on a completely different scale.
That was, so then the next year he added sabers onto the street. Had never been done before. So I kind of was inspired by that and kind of grasped onto that thread and tried to do the same thing.
Okay. Yeah. And you did it in your own direction, because one of the things that I've told my students who want to become instructors is if you're going to take moves or if you're going to take concepts, make it your own. It shouldn't be the same exact thing, because that's how we keep the wheel turning, because, it's important that we have new ideas enter into the realm. For example, Keegan McCoy's state championship run, at Santa Cruz. He did a guard move by all means. He did a toss that it was a parallel toss in front of him and it arced behind his back and he caught it. Mm-hmm. And then the drum major world just freaked out because they've never seen that before. And that's the type of stuff where it's like, yeah, you can take those little Lego bits, turn it on its head into something new that's never been seen before in that lens or in that realm. And then that's how that keeps the art form going.
This marching band, color guard, all of the things, all parade is so rooted in tradition.
It is, yeah.
That in order to push the activity forward, we have to kind of do that.
Yeah, and that's not to say that you can still have respect and reverence for that tradition. Like, for example, all the uniforms that I've had to teach under have been very strict, like Scottish, British uniforms. And like there's like a certain mentality about that. But then also it's like, what if we took half of that and then also like put a new spin on it, right? And there's that like perfect balance point between innovation and tradition, right?
Yeah, and with color guard, it's how it's structured.
Right,
You've
absolutely.
got your opening fanfare, your holding opening statement, your step off, your gate, your salute, your trio, dogfight, finish, maybe a reprise.
No, that's actually an interesting concept that you bring up, because my next question is, so what does design mean to you in regard to a parade performance for color guard? What does design mean?
Well, going back to that, it's a good question. It's a formula. It's so formulaic in that you consider the process in being as true to the music as you possibly can and creating a story, even though it's to quote unquote, parade music. There is still story there. There are still elements that you can really dive deep on. Like one year we did this march, Triumph of Right, at Armio. And I remember I took the kids in and we discussed, what does that phrase mean to you? A triumph of right. And we really kind of broke that down and tried to instill as much of that meaning into our show as possible while still adhering to, again, that formula of, okay, here's the step off. Okay, we got to travel here, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. And, it's funny that I feel like, I think that most individuals in band, when they're playing a parade march on the street, they don't realize that each parade march has a story behind it as well too. And I think having that level of understanding, in my opinion, I always try to get my students to say, I want you to imagine, what is this music? What is the movie behind this music, right? Mm-hmm. So, and I think that level of emotional investment and them really thinking about each note and phrase, that's what makes the performance pop. And that's what latches them to each one of the musical phrases, right? Beyond just counts, because counts are great. I use counts, but also making sure they understand the emotion behind each one of the moves and being able to manipulate that feeling to your advantage in music. If there's an uplifting part and you're throwing a toss, you need to feel that while you're throwing that toss.
Yeah, absolutely.
So those are the small things that I think really helped build my design perspective. But it's so interesting that I've experienced this. I had my recent interview with Rob Jett. I felt the same thing, where there's sort of a bridge of understanding of design across many different elements, no matter if it's the parade or the parade band proper, if it's the drum major, if it's the color guard. Design is design. Making something look sharp and meaningful and intentful crosses many bridges, right? It's not just one, color guard just isn't design focused. It's also every other aspect. You can use that same lens of design to really build a stronger package, right? And having that deeper understanding, I think, is super important. So, speaking about Southern California, I think one of my favorite differences that I see between Southern California and Northern California is, of course, Northern California, we do front and back, and we also do have a preference to individual letters as opposed to a banner. Where do you think there are benefits to that, and what are some of the drawbacks to that as well, too?
The benefits and the drawbacks to doing it the way we do it?
Yeah.
Well, okay. The benefits, of course, being that, I feel like this might be controversial, but this is, of course, my
let's
opinion.
Say it. Let's say it. Let's go for it. I'm a NorCal person. I'm here to support you.
So I think that the way that we do parade provides opportunity for the kids to be smart in their training and for designers to be smart in their designing.
Yeah.
Because we have to create such a complete package in 2.5 minutes. And we have to be able to get a message across that is so smart and concise and demanding. And I think that creates issues in its own way because it's such a fast push to create so much content in such a small amount of time.
Right.
Versus people that their focus is more kind of making the parade just something easy to do at hometown shows, and the focus being more on field.
Right.
Where they get like a 7-minute show where there are a lot of phrases where they're kind of filler. The kids are able to kind of create a long game, so to speak.
Absolutely.
So I think that the benefits, of course, are that, I don't know, I think that you're able to train the kids really well when you are able to really focus on one thing and doing parade really, really well.
Okay.
Because it leaves time for that. You have way more time for that because your show is only 2.5 minutes long.
That's true. And this is an outsider's perspective as well, too. The variety that you're asked to show as well, too, is really condensed. And that's an interesting little game of strategy where you have to be able to show variety in a 2.5-minute section where you do have those demands of the formula as well, too,
Yes.
right? And like being able to have that like full breadth of understanding really translates well, in my opinion, I think, to a winter floor where you're given more time to open up at least a little bit more. If you play it right, they will have that toolkit to make that transition to the winter floor.
Absolutely.
And the only drawback that I necessarily see is there's a lot more to focus on as opposed to just the front of the ensemble going through for half of the march, right? Like that, I guess that's like, there's a lot more time to focus into the Southern California lens, right? Like being able to work just, I don't know, half the amount of 8 counts, right? Or 16 counts, right?
Well, they still spin all the way to the end in SoCal.
Yeah, but you can get away with a lot more when you're
true.
like 400 feet away, right?
Repeating carves. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So this is actually a great lead in. Do you think that, how do you describe it? Is winter guard for preparation for fall, or is fall preparation for winter guard?
I mean, if I answer truthfully, my band directors will kill me, but honestly, the way I view it is fall is in preparation for winter.
Okay. And why?
Well, because in so many ways, winter is more challenging.
Absolutely.
It's more challenging choreography. It's a longer show. They're more artistic. There are added challenges, environmental challenges, as the judging world says, with props, with floors, working in proximity to each other.
Right. And I think that step up, is, I mean, you're telling much more of a story through the performance package. So I'm leaning to agree with you on that one as well too. So this is just sort of a lighthearted one. What was your favorite march, and has it changed ever from a parade band perspective?
I mean, I like anything dark and aggressive and just with a nice woodwind part that just gets beautiful. And again, kind of, I don't want to say creepy, but yeah,
wicked, a little like, yeah, definitely the NorCal sound where it's just like ominous chords at the beginning,
yes.
Killer brass band section or brass part right to the judges line, drops down into something a little bit off, and then resolves at the end.
So of course I love Fusick marches.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I will always be a Fusick girly. My favorite being Knutzy.
Oh,
that's
yeah,
my very favorite.
And that is a monster march because there's that they do a chromatic progression right at the judges stand, and it drops like right up.
Hey everyone, it's Jeremy, and here are your announcements coming from the box. Don't miss all of our bonus content, including On a Water Break in Rhinestones with your host Lexi Duda, exploring the world of the twirlers. Don't miss Parades and Drum Majors at Step Off with your host Jack Goudreau, and get lost in translation with your host Cynthia Bernard, exploring all the words that confuse all of us in the marching arts all across the world. And go Behind the Lens with marching arts photographers all across the country with your host, Chris Marr. Plenty more bonus content from On a Water Break, so listen anywhere you get your podcasts. If you want to be on a Water Break as a guest, or you know somebody that would make a great guest for On a Water Break, email us at onawaterbreakpodcast@gmail.com or find us on social media. Okay, field staff, take it away.
Let's reset.
On the salute line, so everything is exposed. So yeah, no, that is a great march. It is a monster, though.
If I could go back in time and be a student and get the opportunity to spin to that march, I mean, the judges would not be prepared for me. I would annihilate that march as a student. So I've gotten to write to it twice, and every time I'm just screaming at my kids, like, give me more. Do you understand how much I would give to be able to do this march? Ugh.
That's so funny. Okay, so what is some advice for new garden instructors that you wish you had known from the get-go, like immediately?
Oh, man.
And it could be several things. It doesn't have to be necessarily one thing.
I've got tons.
Go for it.
So, yeah, as I said, I never had a mentor. So I was very much thrown into the deep end with my colleague, Marcus. And we would get one compliment from a judge. One specifically that comes to mind that we love to laugh about is we were complimented once on a section of our show that had multiple events happening. And we glommed onto that idea. Oh, they love the multiple events. Let's make everything have multiple events. And that show, still to this day, I can't watch it on YouTube.
What is it?
No, I don't want anyone looking it up. It's on YouTube. It's mortifying. It's so bad. I mean, you can imagine, those of you that do color guard, you know what multiple events looks like for a 5-minute winter guard show. So my advice to any instructors that are entering the game when it comes to parade is, first and foremost, is don't be afraid to try something adventurous, but always understand that when you're writing a parade show, there is the formula in place. And if you don't know what that formula is, absolutely reach out to somebody that has been in the game for a long time, or even longer than you. It doesn't have to be for a long time. I promise that you can reach out to me at any point in time. I will tell you the formula like that. We can talk through all of that. Don't be afraid to reach out to people that you don't even know, because at one point in time, all of us started where you are, and we understand how challenging that can be. I'm here at a rehearsal right now for one of my former students who didn't know where to go with the show, trying to fix through and try to understand that formula. Because when nobody teaches it to you, how are you expected to know it?
Right. And one of the things that I really relate to you on is being able to figure it out on the fly. For example, my mentors love them to death. Rick Wilson, Mario, they gave me routines, but it was to the point where I wanted to figure out how to teach a student to be self-sufficient. And that's one of the ones that really I had to look down to Southern California to find what are they doing that's right? How can I put my little twist on it up here to make it readable in Northern California, but still have that foundation? And what took me forever to figure out was that the execution is everything. Mm-hmm. Execution is everything. And no matter what you want to do, if it's not worth the gamble, don't do it at all.
Well, you learned that lesson sooner than I did. That was probably the last lesson I learned.
Oh, serious?
Honest to God. For me, it was always, my vision was always entirely too big. And I had to really narrow my vision and be very specific and intentional, with the understanding that at the end of the day, it's always going to come down to execution.
Right. And another thing too, that I never took into account was what moves fit that individual too. And that's something that was really complex and difficult for me to understand as well too, because some individuals just get moves quicker. And that might just be from the frame of the body. It might also just be level of understanding. And that took me a while to understand too, is because some moves look better on certain individuals than for example, one of my previous students at Franklin. Very, very, very slim fit individual, but he was really good at parallels because parallels didn't require as much of an upper body lift. It just required arm lift, right? Mm-hmm. So his parallels looked a lot better than his high toss. So when designing a routine, I realized let's use that to our advantage, right? We don't want to do anything that will detract away from that individual, right? If they do something and it like if I'm forcing something down their routine, right? I should not necessarily be doing that. If it goes smooth and it locks in fine, then I should be using it to my advantage.
Yeah, that was something that I actually did pick up really quickly.
Oh, you did?
Was learning to write to the specific skills of my kids.
Right.
I mean, that's harder for you though, because you're only writing for one kid.
Yeah, but like the thing about it is like also like, but I mean, it's the same, but like all eyes are on that one person the entire time. So I feel like the level of like, you are not slipping, you are not moving, like becomes a lot more like apparent. Cause I mean, like that's one score on one person, you're done, right?
You can get away with a lot with 30 kids.
Oh, can you? I've never ran a color guard, so.
Well, I've seen people get away with a lot with 30 kids. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So when you're designing like parade, you talked about like your mentors, like at Fairfield, they brought many different things into the game. When you're going to pick, for example, I'm going to use a letter line this year, or I'm going to use flag this year, or I'm going to go all gun, which I've seen before. I've seen all rifle. That's you. Yeah, absolutely. So where is that decision-making process? Like what was it?
That's a good question. So it always comes down to the kids you're working with first.
Right.
If I know I've got kids in the guard that are all really aggressive, and maybe they're not all rifle spinners, and I've certainly done this before, where I've handed girls that have never spun rifle in their life a gun and said, all right, we're spinning all rifle in the front of the band because this music calls for it. So, you look at your kids you have, and I always choose, what does this music feel like? Yeah. And if, I tend to, you also think strategically in that, okay, well, if I give everyone a rifle in the front of the band, that means the entire color guard is training on rifle. And now we all put our rifles down and we all go to ensemble in the back of the band on flag. Now I've got everybody spinning flag. You just think really strategically. Right. Now the entire color guard is trained on both rifle and flag going into winter. Right. Plus, there's also the added benefit in that it's less writing. Oh, yeah. Because you got the ensemble versus 3 separate lines trying to do 3 separate routines. Right. So there's multiple benefits to switching equipment and just thinking really strategically with the kids that you have, especially for smaller guards too. Right. Yeah.
And so let's take the equipment out of this real quickly. You really helped define motion up in the NorCal parade scene, in my opinion, like using not only just like having moments of motion, like having a fully integrated, like moving sequence underneath equipment, right? Like I feel like that was really the big press at Armio with you and Dr. Mills. So how do you describe it? I'm trying to think. How, from a training perspective, did you utilize those same skill sets on the winter floor? Did those translate immediately, or was it like you picked from the pile and then brought it into the winter floor?
Yeah, it was there was a thing that happened when we first started doing that. So back in the day, for those of you that don't know, parade color guard, I mean, you still see it a lot nowadays, particularly in the SoCal circuit, where there is like body layered onto equipment work, but the spine is very vertical. The body, the shaping of the legs are usually very straight. Things are very regimented, upright position. So because of that, we just thought we'd go for something different. So we started taking different shapes and adding attitude, the infamous rolling into the ground that caused a huge controversy.
Which is hilarious, by the way, because that was one of my favorite parts when I was in band watching Armio. Like, it was the only group that did it. And that's a point of differentiation.
I'm serious. People used to say that what we were doing was dangerous, was awful, was hideous, was ruining. I'm serious. It was just rolling into the ground.
Well, because people are jealous, and the thing about it is they don't know how to do that. And I feel like the same thing happened when we put the parallel inversion in like the state championship L pattern routine, like 2019 for Keegan. Like everyone was just like, you can't do that. That's drum major. Yeah. But like he was following the sheet just fine. So it's funny how we are able to add those new concepts in to push the art form. And I think that it's extremely valuable what you've done.
But after we did that, a judge said on the tape in a nasty way, she said she didn't like it. She said, our job as performers is to go out and do I'm not making this up, I have the tape kept. And I have a quote because I wrote her up. So I have the letter still of her writing.
What did she say?
She said that you can't do that because our job as color guard performers is to do a parade routine, not winter guard on the street. So I didn't like that. So I decided, you know what? That's going to be my thing. I'm going to roll with that. We're just going to do winter guard on the street. And if you don't like it, too bad. I'm writing to the sheet. You either reward me or you won't.
Right.
And if you don't reward me, my kids are going to be fine with that. Win or lose or draw. It's just going to come down to taste.
Absolutely. And I completely agree. And I think that has really helped open up the door for the future of our art form from a parade standpoint in the Northern California region. And that's what really makes it so special. So my final question for you, and I think this is another great transition. Where do you want to see the color guard art form go from here in the parade realm?
I mean, there was one group, I think it was El Capitan, back like
2018. I think I know exactly.
Yeah, they did this show, and I remember they had like a story, and they brought out pieces of fabric
and stretched them along the parade route. Yeah.
I think of that show often, and I remember when I saw it, because they were beating me, so I had to go on the street and see what was beating me. And I saw it, and I thought to myself, that's really creative. They're doing a story here, and people just don't get it. Because people were critical of that show. I don't know who wrote it, but I remember people were being critical about what they were doing. But the second I saw it, I recognized something special in that show.
Right.
And I thought, that's the future of Parade Color Guard right there, is continuing to create special moments on the street that are not bound to the idea of tradition.
Right.
And I think that's something that I really intentionally set out to do. And as we get older, we do less. I mean, you know, I'm older. It's more challenging to do all of these things, lifting children, throwing them in the air, throwing equipment in the air, doing all this stuff on the street.
Yeah.
You know, I get more conservative the older I get. And I would love to see someone new come out and continue to push the boundaries of what Parade Color Guard is, because I think there is still a lot of opportunity for growing it and making it different.
And I think it's interesting because when I'm dealing with new instructors, I see lots of potential in individuals. I just wish that they would come out of the woodwork a little bit more to talk about stuff, because looking back at the journey that I went on in my instructional career, I had to constantly talk to new people and have uncomfortable conversations about my stuff not being up to smoke, not being up to standard, right? And I wish those conversations were had. And I honestly think having that analytical eye and being able to see where the direction of the art form is going is like catching the wind is really important, because then you can start to go to that direction as well too.
I think those conversations happen in the color guard world amongst instructors, but specifically to winter. You don't really hear those conversations about the art form that much on it anymore, really, in parade.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I love talking about Parade Color Guard. So if anyone wants to talk to me about it, they can hit me up.
Okay, so where can they find you? On Facebook and Instagram? Do you have a tag?
Oh, Lord. Yeah, but I'm so ancient.
Okay.
I'm just mostly on Facebook.
Okay, and then so just they can message you.
They can feel free to message me on Facebook at any point in time, always. Okay. Colin Apperson, you can find it probably in this title.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you again, Colin, for sitting down and having this discussion. I'm going to call the band to dismissal. Band, you are dismissed. And we will see you next time. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast and check in weekly to get more content. Thank you.
Thank you.
The On a Water Break podcast was produced by Jeremy Williams and Christine Ream. The intro and outro music was produced by Josh Lyda. To learn more, visit lydamusic.com. And until next time, thanks for tuning in.